Airports have a strange energy. The rush, the noise, the lives crossing paths for just a moment. But that evening at JFK Terminal C, everything stopped. A single voice cut through the chatter. "Ma'am, you need to step aside. This line is for first-class passengers only." The voice belonged to Ethan Boyd, a gate supervisor barely 30, uniform pressed crisp, tone sharp with authority. He spoke loud enough for everyone around to hear. People turned. Phones lifted. Another scene about to unfold. One that everyone secretly knew too well. The woman he stopped was Dr. Naomi Carter. She wasn't dressed like power. Old sneakers, gray hoodie from her college days, a travel bag over her shoulder. Nothing about her said money or influence. Yet something in her calm eyes carried quiet strength. Ethan stood tall, blocking her way to the jet bridge. His smirk was the kind that comes from unchecked confidence, the kind that grows when you believe your badge gives you control over others. Passengers whispered. Some already had their cameras rolling. A few looked away, pretending not to see. But everyone felt it, that tense mix of curiosity and discomfort. Naomi held out her ticket. First class. Seat 1A. Her voice was soft but steady. Ethan glanced at it barely. "I don't care what that paper says. Someone like you doesn't belong in 1A. The words hit the air like a spark in a room full of gas. A baby stopped crying. Old businessman froze mid-sentence. The crowd leaned in, phones steady. Naomi's fingers trembled slightly, but her expression didn't break. "Could you repeat that?" she asked, her tone polite, almost clinical. Ethan crossed his arms. "You heard me. We have standards here." A college student near the corner whispered into her phone, "Already live on social media. I'm watching a gate agent profile a passenger right now. JFK Terminal C, Gate 42. It's happening live." Comments started flooding in. Fire emojis. Angry faces. Words like unbelievable and again. Naomi looked down at her ticket again, noticing something small in the corner. An invitation code, not a standard purchase. Her company had arranged the seat. "Sir, my ticket is valid," she said. "I'd like to board now." Ethan laughed, loud, the kind of laugh meant to humiliate. "Oh, sure, and I suppose you're a VIP too." Naomi's gaze met his. Calm, unwavering. "Actually, yes. I am." Phones clicked. Cameras zoomed. What had started as a small argument was now spreading through feeds like wildfire. Within minutes, thousands of viewers were watching live streams tagged "Darn Flight 42 incident." Comments poured in. Anger, disbelief, and something else, solidarity. Then came another voice, and firm, composed. "What seems to be the issue here?" It was Linda, the senior gate manager. 15 years of experience showed in her cautious tone. She could sense this wasn't an ordinary boarding dispute. Ethan turned to her with forced relief. "This passenger is using a fake ticket. First class." Linda took the paper from Naomi and inspected it closely. It looked real. The invite code was odd, but not unheard of for corporate travelers. "Ma'am, could I see your ID and the card you used for this ticket?" Linda asked. Naomi's phone buzzed with an alert. "Board meeting, 8 a.m. Attendance mandatory." She needed to be on this flight. "No delays, I didn't buy the ticket," she replied. "My employer did," Ethan snorted. "Of course. Let me guess, some charity?" The insult landed hard. The crowd shifted uneasily. Naomi reached into her purse. A glint of metal flashed. A black premium card, unmistakable. It caught the phone cameras immediately. Chat comments exploded. "Did you see that?" "That's the top-tier Amex. Wait, she's rich?" "This guy's in trouble." Her phone buzzed again. Her frequent flyer profile popped up on screen. Platinum status. Hundreds of thousands of miles flown. Linda looked torn between policy and instinct. "Ma'am, we just need proper documentation." "Once that's confirmed, we'll get you on board." Naomi nodded once, calm, collected, but her patience was fading. Across the terminal, strangers whispered. A pilot on standby watched the scene, frowning. And Ethan doubled down. "Security," he said into his radio. "Possible boarding fraud at Gate 42. Naomi's phone screen lit up again. Another email from corporate headquarters. "Critical. Board decision requires your presence." She exhaled slowly. She could have ended this in seconds, but she didn't. Something deeper in her wanted to see how far prejudice would go when unchecked. "Are you absolutely sure about this?" she asked Ethan. He grinned. "Completely. You're not boarding." Two security officers approached. Their faces said it all, and they knew this was bad news. Phones everywhere were still recording. Viewer counts soared past 100,000. "Ma'am, please step aside while we sort this out," one officer said gently. Naomi smiled faintly. Not anger, not fear. Something else. The kind of smile that comes right before a storm. Ethan didn't notice the change in Naomi's posture, but everyone else did. The crowd grew still, waiting. She stepped forward just enough to close the space between them. "Before we go any further," she said softly, "you should call your district manager." Ethan scoffed, but the sound was thinner this time. He doesn't get involved in passenger issues, especially not tonight. "He will want to," Naomi said. The tension in her tone was quiet, measured, but powerful enough to make even the security officers hesitate. One of them shifted uncomfortably, his hand resting near his radio but not moving. The other officer's eyes darted toward the growing crowd of onlookers. Phones pointed like lenses in a courtroom. Somewhere in that crowd, a travel blogger was live streaming the whole thing to his 1,000 followers. Another person was broadcasting to 50,000. Within minutes, hashtags were trending. People were typing things like leatherboard and JFK incident. Linda tried again, her voice careful. "Dr. Carter, please. I'm sure we can resolve this." Naomi turned toward her, still calm. "What circumstances require resolution? A valid boarding pass? Or an assumption that someone like me couldn't afford seat 1A? No one spoke. The words echoed through the terminal, sharp and clean. A businessman in an expensive suit muttered, "This is ridiculous." A young mother with her daughter whispered, "See, honey, this is what we talk about." Ethan's radio crackled loud enough for everyone to hear. "Gate 42, status update." He pressed the button, forcing steadiness into his voice. "Passenger is non-compliant." Naomi tilted her head slightly. "Non-compliant?" she repeated. "I'm standing here waiting for fairness." The security officers exchanged glances again. They weren't sure which side of this would blow up worse, the uniform or the woman holding her ground. An announcement echoed overhead. "Final boarding call for Flight 302 to Atlanta," the crowd murmured. The plane needed to leave, but no one moved toward the gate. The drama held them captive. Naomi's phone buzzed again. "A text, unknown number. Watching your live stream. Call me. Richard." She didn't need to check the contact list to know. Richard Cole, CEO of Sky East Airlines. Her company. Another message came seconds later. "Board meeting moved to 8 a.m. We need your vote." "Must attend." Naomi looked up, meeting Ethan's eyes. "Last chance. Call your district manager." He doubled down, voice louder to cover the nervousness creeping in. "Ma'am, you're not boarding. Step aside or security will escort you out." Phones buzzed. Viewer counts climbed past 200,000. The entire confrontation was unfolding across timelines, hashtags multiplying faster than anyone could keep track. A pilot walking by slowed, assessing the situation. He was tall, middle-aged, with the calm that came from decades in the air. "Is there a problem?" he asked. Ethan straightened immediately. "Yes, this passenger's boarding pass is under review." The pilot looked at Naomi. "May I see it?" She handed it over. He scanned it quickly, invite code, first class, seat 1A. Everything checked out. He turned back to Ethan. "It looks valid to me." Ethan's jaw tightened. "There are questions about authenticity." "What questions?" the pilot asked, voice steady. "It's clearly a company-issued ticket." A ripple ran through the crowd. The balance of authority had shifted. Naomi's phone buzzed again. Missed calls, 6 of them from her company's headquarters. Emails piling up. The story wasn't just viral now. It was national. She sighed softly, then reached into her leather bag. Her fingers wrapped around her tablet. "If you won't call your manager, I will." Ethan crossed his arms. "You don't scare me, lady." Naomi powered on the tablet. The screen glowed bright under the terminal lights. "You should be scared of the truth," she said. The light from the tablet reflected in the lenses of dozens of phones now recording every word. She opened the airline's internal portal, and lines of data appeared. Frequent flyer numbers, travel logs, internal access codes. Then, one phrase caught the world's attention. Sky East Airlines, Board of Directors portal, Dr. Naomi Carter, Chief Technology Officer. The terminal fell silent. The pilot froze. Linda's breath caught. Ethan blinked, confused. What is that supposed to mean? Naomi held the screen steady so the nearest phones could see. It means I'm not just a passenger, she said evenly. I'm on the board of this airline. Shock rolled through the crowd like a wave. Gasps, murmurs, disbelief. Linda stepped back, whispering, "My God." She recognized the name now, then from corporate emails, from press releases. Naomi's calm never wavered. I was traveling unannounced. Quality assessment. To see how our passengers are treated. Ethan's face drained of color. His lips parted, but no words came out. Online, the live streams exploded. Comments poured in faster than screens could refresh. She's the CTO? He messed with his own boss. This is unreal. Naomi tapped the tablet again, revealing more. Internal communications, meeting invites, even her authorization to audit gate operations. The truth was undeniable. She was, in fact, his boss's boss's boss. Now, she said quietly, shall we finish this boarding process? Ethan stumbled back a step. His authority evaporated in an instant. Security didn't move. They didn't need to. The crowd was enough of a witness. The district manager arrived seconds later, sweat beading at his temple. Dr. Carter, he stammered. I sincerely apologize for this. Naomi didn't let him finish. You have a serious problem in your department, she said. And the entire country is watching how you fix it. The crowd was silent again. Hanging on every word, she turned to Ethan. Tell me, do you treat all passengers this way or just the ones who don't look the part? Ethan swallowed. I didn't know who you were. That's not the issue, she said. You shouldn't need to know who I am to treat me with respect. The live stream audience erupted. Comments filled every space on the screen. People cheering, typing, sharing. The district manager took a deep breath. We'll resolve this immediately. Please board at your convenience. Naomi looked around. At the security officers, the staff, the passengers still filming. This isn't just about me, she said. This is about everyone who's ever been told they don't belong. The crowd broke into spontaneous applause. And yet, Naomi didn't smile. Not yet. She knew this wasn't over. She turned toward the jet bridge, ready to board, but paused beside Ethan. You'll hear from corporate soon, she said quietly. You might want to prepare your side of the story. Then she walked through the gate, the noise of the terminal fading behind her, leaving a stunned silence in her wake. The video kept streaming. The hashtags kept climbing, and by the time the plane's doors closed, Naomi Carter's name had become the top trend across social media platforms worldwide. The story of one gate agent's prejudice was now the story of an entire company's reckoning. The flight had only just begun. At 30,000 feet, the cabin lights dimmed to a soft amber glow. Naomi sat quietly in seat 1A, the hum of the engine steady beneath her feet. She wasn't scrolling her phone, though notifications kept flashing across the screen like wildfire. She was thinking. The world below had already begun to react. Her name was trending across every major platform. News outlets were pulling clips from the live streams, replaying Ethan's words over and over. Someone like you doesn't belong in 1A. The line echoed across the internet like a wound being reopened for everyone to see. A flight attendant approached hesitantly. Dr. Carter, can I get you something? Water, tea? Naomi smiled gently. Water's fine, thank you. Even the attendant's voice carried nervous respect. Word had spread among the crew. They knew exactly who she was now. The woman who had turned a boarding gate into a lesson in power and prejudice. Naomi opened her laptop. A secure video conference link waited for her. The meeting had already begun. She connected, her reflection vanishing as faces appeared on the screen. Executives, lawyers, department heads. Naomi, thank God you're safe, said Richard Cole, the CEO. His expression was grave. We've been dealing with an explosion online. Reporters, shareholders, government contacts. It's everywhere. Sarah Kim, the company's chief legal officer, leaned in. We've already been contacted by federal regulators. The footage shows clear evidence of discrimination by a company representative. It's a legal nightmare. Lisa Nguyen, head of communications, added, CNN, Reuters, and half a dozen other outlets want a statement within the hour. The footage has over 5 million views and climbing. We have to respond fast. Naomi stayed silent for a moment, her voice calm when she finally spoke. You've all seen the video? Richard nodded. Yes, every second of it. It's damning. Naomi shared her screen. The recording from her tablet played crystal clear. Ethan's words echoed again, now amplified by the quiet of the corporate boardroom. Someone like you doesn't belong in 1A. The executives looked uneasy. These weren't just employees anymore. They were witnesses to their own failure. This isn't about one employee, Naomi said evenly. It's about the system that allowed him to act with confidence. 47 prior complaints and he was still working the front gate. David Lee, head of human resources, looked down. Those were considered minor behavior notes. Attitude issues. He completed sensitivity training. Naomi's gaze sharpened. Recommendations, not requirements. That's how bias hides. Inside procedures that look fair but protect no one. Silence filled the digital room. The only sound was the faint hum of the aircraft engines in Naomi's background. Sarah broke the tension. Legally, we can try to contain this. Settle, apologize, move on quietly. Naomi shook her head. Containment isn't an option anymore. The internet already knows the truth. If we hide, we lose credibility forever. Richard rubbed his temples. Then what's your proposal? Naomi pulled up a document labeled Project Reset. The screen filled with text, graphs, and timelines. A complete overhaul of how we handle discrimination. Real-time monitoring. Transparent reporting. Immediate accountability. Public transparency reports every quarter. Lisa frowned. That's massive. The cost alone. $50 million in the first year, Naomi interrupted. $15 million to maintain. Compared to the $800 million we've spent in discrimination settlements since 2020, it's a bargain. The number hung in the air. Sarah's eyes widened. $800 million? Yes, Naomi said quietly. Because we keep paying for silence instead of building change. Richard leaned back, studying her. And you think this will work? Naomi looked straight into the camera. It has to. Because if it doesn't, then what happened to me will happen again to someone else, and next time we won't survive the fallout. The flight attendant refilled her glass. Naomi thanked her softly, then continued. This can't just be a PR fix. It has to be a cultural shift. Accountability from top to bottom, executives included. That last part drew uneasy glances. David frowned. Executives? Yes, Naomi said. Every performance review tied to bias prevention results. Stock options tied to inclusion metrics. Real personal stakes. No one gets immunity, not even the CEO. Richard's expression hardened for a moment, but then softened. You're right, he said. We can't build trust unless we're willing to change ourselves too. Lisa started typing rapidly. We'll prepare a public statement. Full transparency. No excuses, Sarah added. And I'll build the legal framework around the new policy. Every infraction logged, every action documented, ironclad. Naomi nodded slowly. Good. Then there's one more thing. The screen shifted to a list of names. Ethan Boyd, Tom Reynolds, District Manager, Linda Ortiz, Gate Supervisor. Each name linked to files full of previous complaints, training records, ignored reports. We can't rebuild a culture on silence, Naomi said. Action starts now. Ethan Boyd, termination for cause. Tom Reynolds, suspension pending investigation. Linda Ortiz, bias retraining and probationary period. No one argued. They couldn't. Richard leaned forward. Do it, all of it. Make this the day we stopped pretending and started fixing. The meeting ended. Naomi closed her laptop and stared out the window at the streaks of cloud and light beyond. The world below looked small, quiet, but she knew the storm brewing there was only getting started. Back on the ground, the company's official apology went live. Effective immediately, Ethan Boyd is terminated for violation of anti-discrimination policies. His actions do not reflect our values or standards. The statement went viral again, shared millions of times. Headlines spread across the world. Airline board member exposes discrimination from within. Ethan's name became synonymous with corporate downfall. The video of his confrontation reached 10 million views before midnight. But Naomi didn't celebrate. She wasn't interested in revenge. She was thinking about prevention. What she had started wasn't about one man losing his job. It was about forcing an entire system to look in the mirror. And she knew this was only the beginning. By dawn, the world had already changed. News anchors debated it live on morning shows. Politicians tweeted statements, and hashtags had merged into one voice calling for accountability. Naomi's face appeared on every screen, not as a victim, but as a symbol. At Sky East headquarters in Atlanta, The boardroom buzzed with nervous tension. Reporters camped outside the glass tower. Inside, the board convened an emergency session. Every executive called in, every department head present. Naomi walked in without ceremony. Her calm contrasted with the chaos around her. Every camera turned as she took her seat. Richard Cole, the CEO, nodded in silent respect. "Dr. Carter, thank you for being here. We're under enormous pressure. The Department of Transportation has requested an internal audit, and investors are demanding answers." Naomi placed her folder on the table. "Then let's give them answers that mean something." She opened the file, charts, data, and evidence of years of ignored discrimination complaints. "We have two choices," she said. "We can fight the narrative or we can fix the problem." Her words cut through the chatter like a knife. Lisa from Communications spoke first. "We've tracked over 8 million mentions of the incident across platforms. Public sentiment is 85% negative. If we don't act decisively, we'll lose control of the story within hours." Naomi nodded. "We don't need to control it. We need to change it." The phrase hung in the air. Simple. Powerful. Sarah, the legal officer, scrolled through her notes. "We've reviewed your proposal for the Respect in Flight program. Real-time bias detection, centralized reporting, transparent audits. It's ambitious, but it would mean retraining 70,000 employees." "Then we retrain them," Naomi replied. "Every one of them. Bias doesn't vanish with press releases, it vanishes with accountability." David, head of HR, sighed. "That's a logistical nightmare. It'll take at least a year." "Then it takes a year," Naomi said. "But the change begins today." Richard looked around the table. His face was drawn, tired but resolute. "Let's hear the plan in full." Naomi tapped the tablet, projecting her proposal. "We start with technology. Every gate encounter fitted with AI-powered systems trained to flag discriminatory behavior. Voice tone, body language, patterns of escalation, all monitored in real time. Any violation triggers a direct report to corporate HQ." Sarah nodded slowly. "That would create an automatic record, no more he said, she said cases. It could save us in court," Naomi continued. "Next, a passenger hotline. Instant access to trained advocates for anyone who feels mistreated. No waiting, no silence. And every case logged publicly, with resolution outcomes visible to everyone." Lisa leaned forward. "Publicly?" "Yes," Naomi said. "Transparency is the only thing that rebuilds trust. We've hidden behind corporate walls too long." Richard studied her, then smiled faintly. "You're not proposing reform. You're proposing revolution." Naomi didn't smile back. "Revolution is overdue." The room went quiet again. The only sound was the buzz of phones lighting up with fresh notifications. The story outside was still growing, spreading across continents, sparking discussions in boardrooms far beyond Sky East. David finally spoke. "There's something else we need to discuss. Ethan Boyd's termination went public last night. We're being accused of scapegoating him." Naomi's voice stayed steady. "It's not scapegoating when accountability is clear. 47 complaints ignored by management. That's a system failure, not a misunderstanding." Sarah added. "And the district manager?" "Suspended," Naomi said. "Mandatory training. Probationary status. If we want to fix this, we start at the roots." Richard leaned forward. "What about the financial impact?" "Investors are nervous." Naomi turned the screen to show real-time data. Stock dropped 4% after hours. That's $2 billion in market value. But if we lead with action, we recover and grow stronger. If we don't, that 4% becomes 20. Lisa nodded. "She's right. The public wants to see sincerity, not spin." Naomi closed the presentation. "This isn't about optics. It's about dignity. We can't put a price tag on human respect." The board fell silent again, the kind of silence that comes before something historic. Finally, Richard stood. "Then it's decided. Implement the Respect in Flight program immediately. All departments will cooperate. Full transparency, real accountability." Naomi exhaled quietly, but her eyes stayed sharp. "Then let's make it permanent." Sarah began taking notes. "We'll need to document every step. Legal protections, reporting systems, disciplinary procedures. Everything traceable." Lisa was already drafting headlines in her notebook. "Our public statement will focus on leadership, empathy, and change. The message will be clear. We're not hiding, we're evolving." Naomi nodded. "Good, because this isn't just about fixing an airline. It's about showing what real accountability looks like in corporate America. Richard sat down again, looking across the table at her. Dr. Carter, you realize this will define us for better or worse. For better, she said simply. If we do it right. The meeting ended, but the work began instantly. Teams formed, calls started, instructions flew across departments. Naomi left the room to a hallway filled with anxious employees. Some whispered, others smiled. Everyone knew they were witnessing a turning point. Later that afternoon, the company's new campaign went live. The statement read, "We failed, and we are changing that failure into progress." It was brief, honest, and unlike anything a corporation had ever released. The reaction was immediate. People who had sworn off Sky East began reposting with cautious hope. Civil rights leaders praised the response. Legal experts called it unprecedented. By nightfall, Naomi's inbox was flooded with messages from employees, passengers, and even competitors. Some thanked her. Some admitted guilt. A few said her courage gave them permission to speak up in their own workplaces, but not everyone celebrated. Inside a smaller meeting room, Richard sat with his senior advisors. One asked quietly, "Do you think she's going too far?" Richard shook his head. "No. I think she's finally taking us where we should have been all along." Outside, the city lights glowed through the glass. Naomi stood alone for a moment, watching them. The world was still chaotic, but something inside her had settled. This wasn't the end of the fight. It was only the beginning of rebuilding something better. Weeks passed, and what began as a scandal had evolved into a movement. Every airline in the country watched as Sky East implemented change at a speed no one thought possible. The new system went live in less than 2 months. Every gate equipped with cameras that detected tone, posture, and escalation. Supervisors received instant alerts when tension rose between staff and passengers. Within the first week, dozens of incidents were intercepted before they could turn ugly. Employees felt it too. Training programs replaced fear with understanding. People began to look each other in the eye again instead of hiding behind uniforms and protocols. Naomi visited terminals quietly, unannounced, just to observe. At every gate, she saw something she hadn't seen before: respect. News outlets began calling it the Carter Standard. Journalists wrote that one woman's patience and resolve had redefined what accountability looked like in business. Stock prices climbed past their pre-crisis peak. But what mattered to Naomi wasn't the money. It was the messages. Every day she received hundreds of letters. A mother from Houston thanking her because her teenage son, who'd been treated unfairly at another airline, finally felt seen. A flight attendant who admitted she'd once judged passengers by appearance and vowed never to do it again. A young woman in Chicago who said, "You made me believe I can lead someday." Naomi read each one. Some made her smile. Some made her cry. All reminded her why she refused to stay silent that day in the terminal. Then one afternoon, she received an unexpected visitor. A man in a dark suit stood at her office door holding a small envelope. It was Ethan Boyd. He looked older, the arrogance gone, replaced by something that almost resembled humility. "Dr. Carter," he said quietly, "I came to apologize in person." Naomi gestured to the chair across from her. "You don't owe me a performance, Ethan, just honesty." He nodded slowly, eyes down. "I thought I was doing my job. I thought rules mattered more than people. I was wrong. I've spent the last few months volunteering with community programs. I've learned what bias really looks like, and what it feels like when you're the one holding the power." Naomi studied him for a moment, then said, "Understanding it doesn't erase it, but it's a start." He nodded again. "Thank you for not destroying me completely. I don't deserve it, but I'll spend my life trying to be better than that man at the gate." When he left, Naomi sat back and exhaled. Forgiveness wasn't easy, but growth rarely was. Months turned into a year. Sky East became the global model for equity and service. Airlines across continents adopted versions of the Respect in Flight program. Hotels, schools, and tech companies followed, creating their own accountability frameworks. The ripple spread further than anyone imagined. Government hearings referenced her policies as examples of effective reform. Universities taught case studies titled, "The Carter Effect: Leadership and the Power of Integrity." But none of the recognition mattered as much as a quiet moment, one winter evening. Naomi was waiting for a flight, this time as just another traveler. A young gate agent approached a family standing in line. Parents, 2 children, and a grandmother in a wheelchair. The agent smiled warmly, adjusting the boarding passes. "We've upgraded your seats so you can all stay together," she said. "Welcome aboard." Naomi watched silently from a few feet away, her heart full. No tension, no condescension, just simple kindness, she smiled to herself. That was the real victory. A few minutes later, a teenage girl approached her shyly. "Excuse me," she said. "Are you Dr. Naomi Carter?" Naomi turned and nodded. "I am." "I just wanted to thank you," the girl said, her voice trembling slightly. "Because of what you did, I decided to study business. My teacher showed us the video in class. You made me believe leaders can actually make things better." Naomi felt a lump rise in her throat. "What's your name?" "Jasmine." "Well, Jasmine," Naomi said with a gentle smile, "the world always needs more people willing to stand up. Promise me you'll be one of them." The girl nodded, eyes bright. "I promise." When the boarding call echoed through the terminal, Naomi gathered her things. The story that began with humiliation had become something greater, a movement rooted in courage, empathy, and truth. She walked down the jet bridge, calm and unhurried, the same way she had the day everything changed. Only this time, no one stopped her. No one doubted where she belonged. As she found her seat and fastened her belt, Naomi looked out the window at the fading sunset. The sky was streaked with gold and violet, vast and endless. She whispered softly to herself, "Real power isn't in making others fear you. It's in making sure no one else has to." And as the plane lifted off, the world below carried her story, proof that one person's dignity can reshape an entire industry, and maybe, just maybe, the world itself. The morning light touched the horizon like a promise. Naomi's flight descended over Atlanta, and as the wheels met the runway, she could already sense that something awaited her beyond the terminal walls. Her phone buzzed repeatedly, messages from Richard, from Sarah, from people she didn't even know. Each one carried the same energy, anticipation mixed with awe. When she stepped off the plane, a quiet applause broke out among passengers who recognized her. They didn't crowd her or take photos. They simply nodded, as if acknowledging something larger than fame. Outside the terminal, cars lined the curb, black sedans waiting for the board members arriving from across the country. The board meeting she had fought to attend a year ago was happening again, but this time everything was different. Inside headquarters, the air felt electric. The Respect in Flight program had transformed from a crisis initiative into a global model. Reports showed a 75% reduction in passenger complaints, record high employee morale, and a stock price that had shattered every previous high. But Naomi didn't care about numbers. She cared about what they represented, change that lasted. The boardroom was filled to capacity when she entered. The moment she stepped inside, the conversation stopped. Richard stood. "Dr. Carter," he said, smiling warmly, "I think it's safe to say you've done the impossible." Naomi nodded slightly. "Not impossible, just necessary." He gestured for her to take her seat at the head of the table next to him. Cameras from major outlets had been granted access for the first part of the session. "The world wanted to see how accountability looked in practice," Richard began. "A year ago, this company faced its greatest reckoning. We didn't issue apologies and move on. We rebuilt who we are, and the person who led that change sits beside me today." Applause filled the room. Naomi's eyes stayed steady, but her hand tightened slightly on the edge of the table. She didn't like grandstanding. She preferred progress. When the applause faded, she spoke softly. What happened that night was more than a single act of bias. It was a mirror held up to an entire system. We can't erase it, but we can make sure it never happens again. She looked around the table, her gaze landing on each executive. Accountability isn't punishment. It's responsibility. It's understanding that every choice we make ripples outward, to our staff, our customers, and the communities we serve. Sarah leaned forward, her voice filled with admiration. "Naomi, because of your leadership, new legislation is being drafted in Congress right now. Airlines, hotels, even banks are preparing to adopt similar systems. It's being called the Carter Framework." Naomi smiled faintly. "It's not mine anymore. It belongs to everyone who refused to stay silent." Richard stood again. "Before we conclude, there's one final matter. The board has voted to create a permanent division within SkyEast, the Center for Ethical Innovation. and we'd like you to lead it as our new Chief Integrity Officer." The room erupted in applause again. Naomi didn't expect it, didn't ask for it, but as she looked at their faces, people who once doubted now believing, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Pride. She rose slowly. "I'll accept," she said, "but only if we remember what brought us here. Not the scandal, not the fame, but the people we almost failed." Her words carried the same quiet power that once stopped an entire terminal. After the meeting, she stepped out onto the balcony overlooking the city. Atlanta stretched out beneath her, sunlight glinting off glass towers. Her phone buzzed again, this time a message from Jasmine, the teenage girl she'd met months earlier. "Starting my first year in business school today. I promised you I'd stand up when it matters. I will. Thank you." Naomi smiled, reading the message twice. Then she set the phone down and breathed in deeply. Inside, the company buzzed with new life. Outside, the city hummed with motion. The story that began with humiliation at a gate had become a blueprint for courage. And as the wind swept across the terrace, Naomi realized the truth she had been chasing all along. Change doesn't start with power. It starts with a single decision to stand firm when standing still would be easier. She thought back to that day at JFK. The noise, the shame, the disbelief. All of it had led here, to this moment of stillness and strength. Somewhere far below, a Sky East plane ascended into the clouds. Passengers settled into their seats, greeted by crew members trained under the very policy she had fought to create. Laughter drifted through the cabin instead of tension. Respect replaced fear. Naomi watched the plane disappear into the horizon, her reflection fading in the glass. She whispered barely above a breath, "No one will ever be told again that they don't belong." And for the first time since that night, she allowed herself to close her eyes, not in exhaustion, but in peace. Because this time she knew the world was finally learning to rise with her.